Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our fourth educational series here, and an exciting one nonetheless, because we have a guest today. And as always, we'll kick it off with some introductions before we jump into our topic at hand. But I'll keep it short on my end. My name is Jared Heckbart. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing here at Brilliance, and I'm going to pass it to Lori.
Thanks, Jared. Yeah, I'm really excited about today too. A little bit about me, and I went to Purdue in computer electrical engineering, and through an internship, I ended up at NASA Johnson Space Center, eventually as a flight controller for the space shuttle program. It was a really amazing opportunity. Eventually, I ended up relocating to Milwaukee, Wisconsin with my husband, who had a job promotion here. And I ended up trying to figure out what could be as cool as space. And so that led me to start a web development company. That was 1998 when the web was kind of in its infancy. And because my background was more on the technical side of things, we found we were a really good fit for working with manufacturers and distributors to create digital commerce solutions. Fast forward to today, our team has grown quite a bit. My husband left his job at Rockwell 9 years ago, and now he leads our development team. And I'm excited to be here today to talk with you about leveraging content to support your customers and grow revenue. Specifically, I'm really excited to have Sarah here with us today. I met Sarah back in 2015, so some years back in the journey, and I'm so glad I did. When I originally met Sarah, it was through a retreat that she put on for around content creation, and I had been experimenting with leveraging content marketing in our business, but really struggled with consistency and also struggled with figuring out what I was going to write about and feeling confident about what I was writing. And working with Sarah has made all the difference in that for us and for me. She helped us to put together a strategy and to create consistency. And what's really exciting is over time, as I've worked with her, what I've written has gotten noticed, and I've been invited to be a contributor on other online publications and now a speaker at different events. And I credit that all to the work that we've done together, Sarah. So that's really very exciting, and I'm excited about what we get to share with our audience here today. So I'd love to let you introduce yourself, Sarah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. Lori has been a fantastic client, and Jared, all of Brilliance, really, because I've had a chance to work with, a number of members of your team over the years. And I really feel like we've gotten to the point where you have embodied that role of thought leader. And here you are continuing to share value with folks. This is what it's all about. So yeah, my name is Sarah Schwab. My business is called Content Creation Coach. I'm also an author. I published a book called Content That Dances, which is available out there and talks about some of what we're going to be able to cover today and the way that I approach a content strategy. But what I really love about what I do is the fact that content is about building connections, and so helping people see the value that they have to offer, but also really understanding how to bridge the gap between them and their audience, their potential customers, reach, and how to do that through content.
I don't want to waste any time. Let's get into it. Sarah, when we talk about content marketing, what are we talking about?
Sure, I always like to start with a little bit of a definition, because the word content has started to be used all over the place. It's everywhere, and people say, oh my gosh, I need content for this, I need content for my social media, I need content for this. People equate content marketing and digital marketing and social media marketing, and it's not necessarily all the same thing. So one differentiation or distinction I like to make is the difference between content and copy. So every word that you write for your business marketing is not necessarily content. A lot of it is copy, and copy's good. We need copy. Copy tells our people about who we are, about our business, about our services, about stuff. It's informational in the sense of factual stuff. Content is about building relationships and providing immediate value. So it's not just about the thing, but it's about the person who's reading it and something that they can take away. So I like to think of it like, instead of learning about a product that I have to then buy in order to get some value from it, I am going to be able to walk away from a piece of content with new insights, with ideas, with maybe some tips or strategies or understanding that is going to help me immediately. At least, small nuggets of that. That's what content is about. So that's the first baseline. And the truth of the matter is, even in the realm of manufacturers and distributors and product-based companies, more and more in this digital world, people are expecting to be able to get something before they buy. They want to be able to engage. They want to be able to learn. They want to be able to download. They want to be able to interact for free before they actually spend money on stuff or buy products. And so that, to me, is what content does, is it bridges that gap before someone's ready to actually, make the purchase, is allow them to engage with you, you capture them, you communicate with them through your content.
So you just touched on some of the digital giants out there. So I'll start with you, Sarah, and then I'd like to hear from you as well, Lori. Manufacturers and distributors are facing competitive pressure from Amazon, Grainger, and other digital giants. How can content help a company more effectively compete with companies with much larger budgets?
That is kind of the question of the day, isn't it? I think a lot of these companies are looking at how the heck do we, compete, or at least play on the same playing field with some of these giants. And content, we've talked about this with Brilliance even. Content itself can be a differentiator. Mm-hmm. Positioning yourself as a thought leader in your industry, as a company that really knows what you're doing, or how to help your company, how to help your clients integrate it, or whatever, it depends on what industry you're in. But it creates value in and of itself that places like Amazon and Grainger and others aren't doing as well as. And the other thing is, like I said earlier, content is about building relationships. Mm-hmm. And that's incredibly valuable, because those companies, the big ones, have some advantages, and I'll let Lori speak to some of the technical details of it, but they aren't necessarily as good at having that personal customer connection and relationship that you can really use content to do that at scale.
Yeah, I so agree with that. And I think when you think about Amazon, they are making huge investments in B2B digital commerce. So definitely, you can see that as an area to be concerned about. But I think what they can't match is that Amazon, they have an amazing breadth of features and a very rich user experience. And they have, hundreds of thousands, I don't know, millions, a lot of products, a wide breadth of products. But what they really can't match is that relationship. And specifically in B2B sales, so many times there's an element of education that's really critical to picking the right product or knowing what the right solution is for you. And so I think for manufacturers and distributors, the real opportunity is to identify what their unique value is in terms of their subject matter expertise that they can share, and then really build that relationship with their customer. And I also think there's a desire from people. People want a relationship, and I think they're looking for trusted people that they can count on. Sarah, as we talk about this, so I'm convinced. I was convinced a while ago, and I'm convinced on behalf of the audience that we all want to create content. So what does a good content strategy look like?
Oh, of course. So again, I think people get into the place of like, well, should I be writing blog articles, or should I be posting this, or making videos, or whatever? And so understanding a strategy of how it all fits together is really important. And I have kind of a fun way of describing it. I know Lori and Jared have heard me talk about this before, but it's my water park analogy. So for those of you who've been to a water park before, the way I think about creating a content, it's your digital platform, your content platform. It's like building a water park. And the reason people even come into a water park is because of the rides, right? And I think of that first ride as like one of those ones that kind of looks like a toilet bowl, and you go around and around and you come out the bottom. Does everybody know?
Right, yes.
So that's your first funnel. And at the top of every funnel, digital funnel, content funnel, is a piece of what I call catalyst content. So that's the first type of content that I work with people on that fits into a strategy. So whether it's, you know, a PDF or a download or a webinar or a video or training or whatever, a catalyst content is behind a wall. So people have to either opt in for it, right? You capture their contact information, they maybe have to show up, but either way, you're capturing them as a lead, and it gives you the ability to then follow up with them and communicate with them. So catalyst content. And then as people come through that funnel and you communicate a little bit, you make an offer perhaps, and maybe they buy something, but a lot of them who just landed on your site or have opted in for the free thing and are getting to know or evaluating their options, they don't buy right away. And that's just a natural part of the sales cycle. So what do you do with them when they come out? And the answer is you put them in the lazy river. River at the water park, right? They're in a tube and they're kind of just going around and hitting the waterfalls and looking around. The lazy river is the second type of content that I call nurturing content. And nurturing content, you have to create consistently and put it out there, and it's totally free. The goal is actually to get it in front of as many people as you possibly can. It's about visibility, it's about building awareness, it's about, you know, moving that relationship forward for the folks who are already in the lazy river, maybe getting a few more in. And so you're doing that regularly, whether it's every week, every couple of weeks, maybe more in some cases. But then what happens is sometimes people, they look at that lazy river, they look at their blog or their email newsletter, and they're like, this isn't really working. And that's because that's not what the lazy river is for. When you want someone to actually re-engage, take action, make a sale, whatever, you need a way to get them out of the lazy river, which in my world is another funnel, another piece of catalyst content, another opportunity, another webinar, another join us for, you know, this training or class or something to help them understand further and take that next step. And then you make an offer, and that's when they buy. So again, it looks different depending on the structure of the business, but that water park analogy is how I help people understand where certain types of content fit and where everybody is on their journey.
So, you know, I know for Brilliance and for many of the companies we work with, their teams are stretched pretty thin. Like it's a matter of like, so everything you said just sounds amazing and great, and I want to do all of it, but like, how can I get started with the team I have or with the limited amount of time I have and make it work?
Right. So the first part of the answer to that question is a little bit of a mindset shift, which is hard for companies. But that is, I actually think of content as a time saver if you do it right. You know, it feels hard to pull yourself away from, you know, if it's customer interactions or whatever else that you have to do to sit and write a blog article, right, Lori, or whatever it might be. But if that blog article is going to reach 100 people or a few hundred people or maybe even 1,000 people, think of how much time you're actually saving from making those touch points one-on-one individually. So if you do content right, it actually is, it's a leveraged activity. It's a time saver. So it's important to prioritize it. So that's number one. But I also get it, like reality is we only have so many hours in the day. So two more thoughts on this one. One is format. Content really comes in two different types, two different formats. It's either written or it's spoken. Now there's many, you know, forms within each of those, but those are that's the two methods of communication. And people and companies are different in terms of what works better for them. So if the idea of like stepping in front of a video camera is horrible, and the technology of trying to upload it or, you know, edit videos or do that is overwhelming for you and you get stuck, then that might not be the quickest, easiest way to get started for you. And if it's easier to sit down and think of, you know, 3 or 5 ways, helpful tips, helpful how to do something, and write a few hundred words on it in a document and get it out there, you know, you pick the one that's faster for you. In some cases, people are much more comfortable if I can turn on my phone video camera and talk for 5 minutes and be done, then there's content that we can share That's great. So it's neither one is inherently faster. It depends on, you know, the wiring of the person who's doing it and the company and their capabilities. So I look at format for how can we easily, quickly get content out. And the last thing is, I think a lot of companies and a lot of business folks stop themselves or take way too long. They stop the process because they're trying to reach a level of quality that maybe isn't necessary. You know, and I don't want to say you should put out schlocky content, but I also don't want you to take, you know, 2 months to make a video because you're trying to be Paramount Pictures when people are expecting, you know, YouTube. In the era of things like YouTube and webinar and Zoom and quarantine and, you know, all of this stuff, people are not expecting, you know, this uber high production quality. And so I think notch your expectations to a point where it's more important to be consistent and to be getting stuff out and to be sharing value than to be worrying quite so much about the you know, high level of quality.
Yep, I so agree. Yeah, I think authenticity matters, right? And so, and trying to be perfect, you never would get it done. So yeah, I totally
It's funny,
agree.
sometimes that's my role even, Lori, because it's hard, when it's you, you're like, oh, I don't know if it's good enough. And I'm like,
right,
it's good enough. Do it, send it out.
Right, yes, definitely, yeah.
I'd add in there as well, just having worked with Sarah now, you know, I have fallen victim to not prioritizing the content I need to get done. But it is so powerful for so many reasons, and one specifically to me is the idea of being able to repurpose content that we've created. So if you take the time to get something done, you can leverage that content for future initiatives, whether it be a webinar or some additional offer you're trying to come up with. And so just setting the time aside and making sure you get it done, it could lead to future opportunities for you and you just don't even know it yet.
I like to think of it as an asset. You are literally creating an asset for your business that you can use and repurpose, like Jared said, in all sorts of different ways, which is not the same necessarily for all the other activities that you're doing.
We know a little bit being a client of yours, but what kind of staff would you need either internally or externally to deliver on a content strategy?
Yes, we were talking about this, and I realized there's really 3 roles that you have to fill in order to effectively get content out and implement a strategy like this. And they can be all one person, they can be 2 people, they might be 3 totally different people, and some of them might be inside your business and some of them might come from outside the business. So, but the way I thought about it, number 1 is you need that thought leader, right? Somebody has to be the face of the content, the one with the expertise, the one who's building the relationship on the business side of things. And who is that going to be? So that's one role. And whether that person actually, you know, writes every word of it or not, they still need to be engaged in, you know, knowing the messaging and being able to convey their side of the content. Number 2 is what I decided to call a messaging specialist, which is kind of what I am. This is the first time I've actually used that word before. But a lot of times the thought leader, they know what they know, but they're so deep in it that it's hard for them to communicate it in a way that is, you know, concise or organized or relatable to the folks who are actually reading it on the other end. So someone like me or a good, you know, marketing communications kind of person is going to be the one to be outlining the articles and editing the articles, or, you know, coming up with the topic lists and the bullet points and all that kind of stuff, so that that person can really convey what they know in an effective way. And then last is, I called it the implementation specialist. And that's the person who has to take an article or a video or an audio or a webinar or whatever and get it out there. You know, that's more of the digital marketing kind of person. It's posting it on the website, it's posting it on social media, it's making sure that it uploads to the right places and all of those kinds of technical things. And so for me, I definitely bring the messaging piece, messaging and strategy piece to my clients. They bring the thought leadership piece by definition, but then the implementation can actually happen. I can do some of it at some levels. I won't say that I'm like, you know, the highest digital implementation person, but I can post on most blog platforms and set up email newsletters and things like that. So that one we kind of figure out depending on what platforms they're on and what resources they have.
I think that's so interesting. When you talk about the messaging specialist, I know so many times, Sarah, when we get on calls and we'll talk about what's the next content piece I'm going to put together, we'll talk about an idea and I'll be like, that's so obvious. Like, I don't even think I have anything to say. Like, everybody already knows this. And you remind me that that the things that seem obvious to me, not everyone does already know. It's so helpful to have a sounding board to talk that through and for you to help me identify the ideas that can be compelling, that may not seem like something worth sharing to me. So
100%. I run into that a lot. It has a name. It's called the curse of knowledge. And the curse of knowledge says this, do you remember? It says, once you know something, it's really hard to remember what it's like to not know that thing, which makes it hard for the thought leader, who is usually so deep into their levels of knowledge about their industry or their work, to remember what it's like to be on this side of someone who is just getting started, say in e-commerce or in whatever that might be. So part of my role, again, is to bridge that gap. That's what the messaging specialist is about.
I have a technical question then. So we're huge believers in integrated content and commerce at Brilliance, being a systems implementer. Lori, what are common challenges that we see when it comes to integrating that idea of content and commerce?
Yeah, in software platforms, usually you'll have platforms that technically are good at content management and technically are good at digital commerce, but it's hard to find platforms that are strong in both of those areas. And so because of that, you'll see organizations that many times have an e-commerce site that's running on different software than the rest of their corporate content site. And in that case, it means it's really hard for them to have both a user experience that's easy to navigate between their content and their product pages and their checkout. It also means that they don't do a great job of cross-promoting the content and product information within their site because they're all on different platforms. They're on 2 different platforms. So here's an example, Parts Master. So I think this is really interesting because so they're on a platform that we work with called Episerver that does a really great job of enabling content and commerce to be used, leveraged in the same platform. And this is an article they have on their site, and you'll see they have related articles down the right. And at the bottom of the page, they have related products. And so you can really quickly and easily move between their products and content because it's all a part of the same platform. So I think, you know, there are other ways to accomplish this. If you do have 2 separate platforms, you can basically skin them both to look the same, but it's going to create some maintenance headaches in terms of enabling that kind of a relationship between the 2.
And even I would think, and I'm not the technical one, but on the back end for the business with the customer database or whatever you want to call that, like if someone buys a product and if someone reads an article, are you able to know that that same person, you know, did both of those things? And when they're integrated, you have such a clearer picture of what who the customers are, who the visitors are, and what they're looking at and what they're engaging with.
Right. Yes. Yeah, oh, definitely, it's true. I mean, I think both in terms of maintenance for marketers, also for IT departments, having to maintain 2 separate platforms and upgrading them and all of that, those are major headaches.
What are third-party tools available to increase your content effectiveness?
Oh, that's not a Sarah question. That's a Lori question.
I have an answer. You can chime in, Sarah, if you want.
Many platforms on different levels, especially for small businesses. But I think for manufacturers, distributors, and this level, I let Lori speak to some of what's available.
Sure. Well, I did want to share. So there is an offering right now specifically in terms of content effectiveness that's available from our partner Episerver called, they have a content diagnostics and content intelligent product that they're offering for free. Right now is as part of a special offer that will enable you to do real-time content auditing on your site to look at what types of topics you have in your content, but also what topics people are engaging with the most, and also give you some predictions of what are the topics that you should be the most focused on creating content for in the future, and really using data analytics to help drive your understanding of content on your site. So I think it's a pretty interesting thing that's available for free right now for 3 months.
All right, let's try again. I'll circle back to you, Sarah. In what ways can content help companies who are navigating uncertainty around the COVID situation?
Obviously, complicated question, depending on the company, but I see, Lori was starting to show this, so something like that analytics and having that kind of data and metrics is one benefit for digital marketing in general and content marketing. You can see what people are actually engaging with, see what they're interested in. And one of the things that happens with content, it sort of seems like I come in and we're gonna take what you know and push it out there. But a really good content strategy, it's an evolution, and it becomes part of your business growth, really, in my opinion. So you start with what you know, you put it out, but you see the feedback and the engagement and what people actually want and what they're interested in, and to Lori's point, guiding what you might create next, what you might even develop next in terms of product development, where your business might go in terms of communications, new target niches and things like that. All of that can actually happen when you implement a content strategy in a really effective way. And that right now and it's all digital. It can be done from home, from wherever, from how people are doing business now. This is something that you can move forward on, and I think it's tremendously valuable.
Back to something you were saying earlier, Sarah, about the fact that really good content's all about creating connection. And I think right now, in the midst of the uncertainty that exists right now, people are really craving connection. And this is a great opportunity to develop relationships that start now potentially, or build on relationships you've started in the past, but that will enable companies to come out of all of this stronger. So I think content's just, it's one of those things that, you build it now and you can leverage it for a long time to come. So certainly a good thing to be spending your time on.
Well, and can I turn it to you too, Jared? Because as the sales, I'm putting you on the spot. As a salesperson, sales director, I always perceive content as something that's valuable for someone in your role, or salespeople in general, because instead of just having to constantly ping and ask and push and hey, sell, you have value that you can offer. Hey, let me send you this article, or let me share this with you. Talk a little bit about how content has been helpful for your role.
Absolutely. Yeah. Fair enough to put me on the spot. I deserve it after the last question. We sell some pretty technical products here at Brilliance and services. And, there are times where being able to provide someone a document or some research or whatever it may be that we've created could make it a lot more easy for someone to understand versus trying to explain something on the phone. And we found through research as well that our buyers typically like to have their hands on that content and that research. We tend to work with manufacturers and distributors who have technical individuals on staff that would much rather have hard copies of things to review and share within the office versus setting the time up to get on another call and go through something and having to pull people in. It just becomes this exercise that's not incredibly valuable. So having this inventory of content has been incredibly powerful for us, and I would definitely advocate for anyone out there to do the same.
Tell people how they can learn more about what you do.
Sure.
Sure.
I have so much.
Yeah.
You know me, I could go on forever and ever. A lot of it is in here. If people are interested, my book is available. It's called Content That Dances. There's stories about me. And I can be found on my website, which is contentcreationcoach.com. There is actually a free chapter from the book that talks about a little bit about how we didn't even really quite get to this level of detail about how content specifically interacts with your website, your social media, and also your email marketing, and how those play together. It's called Content Dance Partners. So have people download that, or they can, find me there and reach out to me directly. So that would be fantastic. It was my pleasure to be here.
My closing thought would just be that I really believe that content is how companies with smaller budgets than Amazon, which isn't that all of us, can better compete. I mean, content is what, is the strategy of the underdog. And I just think it can be so powerful. And I'm just so excited that we got to have you on with us today, Sarah. So thanks.
Yes, thank you. Very special thank you to Sarah Schwab, Content Creation Coach. Definitely check her out. We will be her first in line to recommend her. She's done wonderful things for us here at Brilliance. So thank you, and take care.